AQ, our super band. Please, a round of applause for them. They're starving. It's almost lunchtime. It's almost lunchtime for everybody. But before lunch, we have a fantastic fireside chat. I'm sure all of you are waiting for this moment, because if you're in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the world, in Europe and in this country, you probably heard the big news this summer. And if you didn't hear them, you were living in a cave somewhere. The giant AT&T bought 100% of AlienVault, the cybersecurity company. Woo, woo, woo! They say, yeah, hello, hello, woo! It's our own Liz Fleming, of course, Adara Ventures. Yeah, responsible, these guys as well, amongst many others. But, somebody saying hello? Responsible as well, or just a fan? Probably it's just a fan. So I got distracted. What happened? Oh, yes, so this AlienVault, a company founded in Spain, making this the biggest, or amongst the biggest, let's say, exits in the Spanish tech industry, the tech sector. AlienVault was founded in 2007, and it took more than 10 years, a lot of pivoting to deal with the changes and the challenges around A, B, C, D, and E to finally get there. So, to tell us about this long journey, we have with us two people that know this company really well. The first one is an experienced investor, a company builder, and one of the pioneers of cybersecurity industry. He's the co-founder and managing director of Forge Point Capital, which invests in early-stage and selected growth companies in cybersecurity. The second one has been in the front line of cybersecurity war before it was even given a name. 20 years of experience, professional experience in IT security environment, although he doesn't look like it. You'll see, he's young as a flower. And he's the founder and 5 successful startups. He's the co-founder of AlienVault, founder and CTO of 4IQ, and our very own successful Spanish entrepreneur. So please, let's welcome Julio Yepez, Alberto Yepez, sorry, and Julio Casal. Here they are. Woo-hoo-hoo. Alberto.
Yes.
And Julio.
Well, thank you very much for coming to the audience. I want to make sure that we get the human aspect of the success in AlienVault. It took a lot more people, it took a village to make it successful, but Julio was the one that started it. So Julio, to begin with, where do you go to school? Where do you start it? How the idea of AlienVault came about?
Well, I'm from Madrid.
Okay.
From here, and I studied physics, which has nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And the reason is there wasn't any computer science career at that time, but from the age of 12, 13, I was already programming in the Spectrum video game. So for me, it came really, really early. I wanted to build software from my childhood. That was always there.
And you started a company before even AlienVault, right? AlienVault came out of a need?
Several of them, yeah. So internet providers, gaming companies, and then a number of service companies here in Spain, including cybersecurity companies. So a long...
Yeah, and I remember you told me that the reason you started AlienVault is because you didn't want to buy the products that AlienVault eventually did, or you started with the open source, right?
Yeah. So open source was actually the great idea that we had, but it was some kind of defensive approach strategically to overcome the huge competitive disadvantage that you have when you are starting in Spain, and especially at that time, that was 2007, right? And so we thought that how do you compete? We wanted to do products, and we wanted to be global, because we already were pretty successful as services. We had hundreds of people in services, but that doesn't scale. You cannot build a huge company with. So the opportunity, we thought it was open source to overcome that difficulty of competing with guys from Silicon Valley, just like you, and the big investors there.
And so when you have the idea, you establish the first product, get the community going, why did you decide to get venture capital? And I know first it was in Spain, right?
Yes. So we established that. So we saw the opportunity. We just waited many years. We were doing services, waiting for the opportunity to do that open source product. So we envisioned that product, which is a CM, a security event management, and there wasn't a CM open source. So we said, okay, now is the opportunity. All the idea was, okay, let's become the leader in the open source world of this product. That will give us the brand and the go-to-market and the way to become global. So so the open source was always that opportunity. So from there, we were successful. We became the global leaders in open source of CM. It was known. It was in hundreds of companies, big companies, thousands of downloads per week, et cetera, et cetera. So from there we said, okay, now let's do the jump. Let's try to scale. Let's try to go out of Spain. And then we got our first venture capital, Adara, which is some of the colleagues are here, and that's what I call the first base of the bridge. That's what it allowed us to do the jump to Silicon Valley. So that was really, really important.
And then you decided to make the jump, and then you had several venture capital firms in the United States that were interested in working with you.
Yeah, actually that's an interesting one, because we arrived there, and that's funny. We had this dinner at AlienVault, and I told the investors, oh, you think that I came because Alberto took me from Spain, but actually that's not true. We went and we landed totally alone. We knew 0 people in the United States of America, not one, 0 persons, right? So it was really, I think, a brave move, and that implied, of course, our families, and that implied my 2 one-year kids and my 3-year kid and my wife, job, and my house. So that was a dramatic move. Also, my co-founder did the same, right? And when we got there, thanks to this open source community, and already seated, if you want, market and brand, very quickly we gained traction. So that was really key. So we had a term sheet from Bain Capital, which is a huge fund. It's a really, really good fund, and 2 really, really good investors, because they saw that traction in open source, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we found Trident Capital, which is Mr. Alberto Yepes, and we decided to go with Trident, as is obviously for good, and thank God, but that was the decision.
And you know, what we were really impressed when we were doing the due diligence, you know, you had great companies in Spain like Telefónica, you had Bank of Spain, you had Metro Madrid as customers. And so what we projected was that with very little investment and so on, you were able to convince very large companies to be able to take the risk. How important are those early customers to make sure you create the right product market fit?
Oh, they're vital, absolutely vital, because the early stage, which was that first phase, is based, and the objective of that early stage is to prove the product market fit, and the product market fit is basically that you have repeatable customers that actually pay money, and they are not just your friends, but they need to solve a problem with your product. And you need to prove there's a number of them that you can, and that is possible in different regions. Not only we had in Spain, which those ones, they were really important. Telefonica really helped us, and those first customers. But we already had, when we had the term sheet, we already had maybe in 10 countries, number of customers, very dispersed, like, I don't know, in the US, a couple of them, in the UK one. So yeah, I think it was proven that we had a product that we could sell, and there was a specific customer with a specific need that needed our product and would spend. No?
So I remember we raised the Series B. It was an $8 million round. You know, Adara and us participated, and then we had an interesting conversation. I remember I gave you a paper. Remember? Yeah. There was the entrepreneur's dilemma. Do you want to be king, or do you want to be rich? You remember?
Yeah. So that was interesting time. So what happens when these kind of big investors such as Trident, now ForcePoint, come in from from Silicon Valley. And what happens when you are a guy from Madrid in Spain, you don't speak very well the language, you don't know anybody in the country, maybe you know your neighbor and the guy that sells pizzas to you and a little more, and you don't know the legal, etc., etc. So you need American executives, you need people from the local. And so, so there's this moment where founders, most of the founders have to leave their baby to other people, other executives. And that's called, actually it's the founder's dilemma. Founder's dilemma.
Yes.
And it's a study that MIT made. And what it says, do you want to be rich or what you want to be king? If you want to come to the potential of the company, to the top potential of the company, most probably you have to step out and you have to put other person, which is the appropriate person for this growth phase. You were a good early founder, for the early phase. Now you need for the growth phase a different role, which is totally opposite probably. And then, so that was really hard. That was absolutely very difficult times for founders.
I remember together we decided that we were going to go and select the CEO. It wasn't us bringing somebody, but together we were going to make the same decision. We interviewed 7 people, remember? We got 2 finalists, and we ended up working with Barmack, which wishes he would be here, but he's in AT&T now, and the president of the AT&T Cyber.
Incredible, good decision, and lucky decision, and also risky. So that's what a good venture capital, Silicon Valley venture capital does. They bring you the people, and they bring you the best people, actually. Alberto brought to us 7 great possible CEOs, and very, very experienced guys, that some of them, they've done, I think, billion in value companies. And so he let us choose. We did choose, although of course you were also agreeing on the decision. And we decided on the guy that had not been a CEO, and which was strange because we had very good ex-CEOs, because we thought he had the moment, he had the energy, he had the vision, and that he would become a great CEO, and he would. And that was Barbara Mehta, which was absolutely vital for the success of AlienVault, and is now considered one of the big CEOs now in Silicon Valley, actually. Yeah,
and now he's president of AT&T Cyber. He has more than 3,000 people working for him and driving AT&T's strategy. But going back, we bet on somebody that wasn't proven but had a lot of experience. He'd worked in multiple startups and had something to prove. He was hungry. Because sometimes when you go with the obvious choice, sometimes it doesn't necessarily work that way because they have a different way of doing things. So I think it was an interesting decision. But tell me about the dynamics between the teams. Now you have the Spanish culture, the space of how you operate, and you have these Silicon Valley guys that they think they know everything, and then so the challenges, the things that you learn in that process, because people is one of the biggest assets, but also opportunities and challenges that you have as a founder, as a CEO, as a leader, right?
Oh, that was really, really hard. It's just a class, so absolutely class of cultures, of teams, of regions, of time zones, of languages. Really, really hard. So that's a great challenge that you have when you're building a global team. We're having the same challenges now in the new company that we're building, and even though we thought that we knew everything, it's still really, really, really hard. So that was very, very complicated, and that unfortunately gave to some of our initial employees to leave, right? And that was, just imagine that situation. So that's when you really have to test yourself and you say, well, what is my commitment to develop the potential of this company at any rate? And so, yeah, very hard growing pain, I think. That's not easy at all.
Yeah. Remember the different pivots that we had to do in order to get to the market. There were...
exactly.
You started from open source.
Exactly. Yeah.
Moved to commercial.
Yeah, so then this, as you can see, there's been phases of pivots and changes in this journey, and which I guess is for what happens to most startups, no? They get to at a certain size. So then we realized that our open source model was great for the first phase, but it didn't scale to become a big company, as we wanted to build. So so there was a total change in the go-to-market. So the go-to-market changed into a velocity model, which is totally opposite as open source. Open source is just a pooling of leads. You just wait, you just give for free, and wait for people to come. And this is just the opposite. You have like 100 guys chasing, like very aggressively pushing the market and bringing and creating a velocity model with lead generation, with very sophisticated capabilities to bring customers and very fast engine. And that took the company to a different level, absolutely. That is what it really drove growth for all these last years, and put AlienVault what it is. So
the technology also changed over time, right?
And then we had to change the technology. So another pivot, another change, which was that our technology, the big data world came after we started. So our technology wasn't cloud technology. And of course, you need to have cloud technology nowadays, right? So we had to completely change the platform, rewrite the platform. And that has enormous implications, of course, in the sales, in the go-to-marketing, in the market, in the revenue model. And there's also pretty scary thing to do at that size and at that volume. And that was pretty recently happened, like 1 year ago. And it was hard, right? It was scary moments. But yeah, another challenge and another phase and another pivot from the.
Yeah, I think Alberto Gomez from Adara did a great article that talks about the multiple pivots that the company gone through. So I think highly recommend it to the audience.
Yeah, 5 pivots.
The different pivots that we made, right?
He located, and I jumped over some of them, but there's been the interesting thing on AlienVault, I think, and probably most, but since AlienVault had to relocate from Spain to the US, it's a longer journey than maybe a company that is born in the US, but there's so many different phases, and each of them of so different nature. The challenges were totally different. Were either technological at the beginning. There was a moment where it was a legal challenge. So we had to relocate from here to the US, and that's actually not as simple as it seems. Actually, it's pretty hard, right? And so we couldn't do it because there was legal and tax situations that, and then we had to find that, and we had, by the way, a great partner, Pedro Fernandez from Puerto Rico, and then I think here's Pedro. We pioneered something called re-domestication. Many startups have done that before, but when we did that, it was the first one, right? Nobody knew how to do it, and even the governments, and we relocated to Delaware. That was another moment with a different type of challenges. So 5 pivots, that's what the total it took.
Yeah.
Together.
To get there. Now, there was a time when you told me, look, I want to leave my operating role in AlienVault because I have the best people working for me now. You have the best team in velocity models, you have the best CTOs, the great CEO and all that, and you say, look, I want to try to do something else. We'll reserve for a moment that you started a new company. But I remember we had a discussion that you said, I should stay in the board. So how important was to stay in the board and board of directors? Because I think entrepreneurs oftentimes have a blind spot. They don't understand the importance of a board of directors. So did you learn anything? What were things that you appreciated and you learned out of that experience?
Yeah, so well, actually that was important decision. That was basically an MBA. So how many board members did we have at the end with this Series E? There were like maybe 10 funds, including Kleiner Perkins, Intel, VGV, General Keith Alex, Peter Pace, really big guys. The guy that manages Kleiner Perkins, for example, and
you're the CFO of Yahoo.
Successful, the CFO of Yahoo. So that was basically an MBA for me. I was basically listening, but I was learning first. That was a lucky and honored situation for me, of course.
Yeah, I remember it was an interesting discussion saying it's great that you're going to leave your operating role, but this is a unique opportunity to learn from others, to understand how the company eventually take it to its logical exit.
And learn the Silicon Valley style and the Silicon Valley way of things. Was very interesting.
And some of them are
But
good,
how,
and some of them are bad. It's not in everything.
how the bets are done in the long term, how the bets are done big time. The people believe in the big outcome and invest in the long term. That mindset, it's absolutely not what we have in Spain because of our different.
Now, this is an interesting question. Is if you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Oh man, so yeah, so I think we're very lucky. So the essentials, I would say that they were good, and I wouldn't change any essential piece of this journey. But of course, we made trillions of mistakes. And if I think of why, and a lot of it at the beginning was this short-term view of, and that's a little bit of what happens in the Spanish entrepreneurs, because you haven't seen big exits. So you just think the ceiling is here, I don't know, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, but you don't believe in the $1 billion exit, right? So you operate or you invest in that. And so, of course, it's different. For example, if you take some certain people that they help you in the short term, but they might not help you in the long term. But so that I made, of course, many of those mistakes. That I would definitely change in the, if I could, of course.
Now, when you also now that you reflect on the acquisition with AT&T, do you have any regrets? Do you have anything that you said it was worth it? Because several people in Spain did well from your original team as well, right?
There's regrets or what?
The regrets and the positive things that you learned out of that, yeah.
Well, as I said, so regrets, we made a lot of mistakes. And another regret I have, which is personally for me, I worry too much. So I get really, really concerned, and I suffer so much in my health phase for that, right? And that's also a kind of an insecurity that entrepreneurs have, we have for lack of the long-term view and belief in the vision, no? And so you have a vision, and it typically happens. So the visions I see in entrepreneurs, they're true. It's only a question of how do you operationalize and do that. No? But you have to stick very well in focus in that vision. And every time you get out of that way and your value proposition and you operate in other whatever down ups and downs that confuse you, that you'll pay that. And we made big mistakes also in AlienVault. At some point, we hired an incredible group of salespeople, really, really expensive, covering the whole US, to go to the wrong market. That was a huge mistake, totally out of our value proposition. If you look at it right now, it's obvious that was it. Until we didn't change that, the company didn't. But for the rest, AT&T has been fantastic. It's a great outcome, of course. Really, really happy. And it's also a continuation of the technology. So the technology now is going to be the core technology for AT&T global cyber operations. Is going to be as big as $1 billion, I think, next year, $1 billion revenue.
Yeah.
Very big operation. And they're going to run it all, on top of AlienVault, because AlienVault is a cloud platform with apps. So that's going to, and this is a continuation on the team, no? And we have a lot of Spanish engineers, a lot of Spanish people. We bet a lot in the Spanish talent, in the engineers. And those guys, they're just going to grow. They're going to have access to an incredible opportunity, and they're going to hire more people, no doubt.
They'll start a company one day themselves because they've gotten all the experience. I remember there was a time in which we were adding 700 customers a quarter. It was amazing, the velocity model, but when we started discussions with AT&T, they said we only had 3.2 million business customers.
Yeah.
And can use skills to service that group,
Just
right?
think about that. Just think about it, yeah. So
It's not just the US. They have customers and they support global companies everywhere, including China, the Middle East, everywhere else. People
only
don't understand that.
2% of 3% of those come into AlienVault as customers. They just multiply by 10. No?
Exactly. So now you're doing all over again. You decided to start another company.
Yeah.
And so you like the pain. What are you doing differently?
That's a total different scenario. That starts in the Silicon Valley, and we started AlienVault with no money, 2 people in a garage, and this time we're in Madrid, and now we're in Silicon Valley. We have access to and know people, and we have confidence from investors that help us from the beginning. So this time we're playing best in class. In AlienVault, we never had the chance to play best in class. It was a unified approach because we didn't have the resources to be the best in this specific tool. But we gave a unified, broad tool, which was very convenient for the mid-market. But this time we can play best class. So
what does 4IQ do? Because many people in the audience do not know.
Cyber intelligence, which is our next phase of cybersecurity. So this is the problem of attribution and knowing the who and the motives of the criminals. So tracking cybercrime, hunting cybercrime, and scoring and knowing the profiles of even millions of actors out there. Just to hunt them, or just to protect affected people, or just to help in the fraud operations of financial institutions to screen customers as they engage on those platforms. So it's pretty new, and it's definitely it was a great vision. The vision, I'm really happy. It's happened, no doubt. It's coming, and there's a market happening right now, and now. What we've been struggling is in the product market fit. That took more than we thought, and in the investment, because again, this is a totally different approach. We're investing heavily into become a best in class. We want to be the #1 in the world and come to the top companies in the world, Fortune 100 companies, and come and tell if you want to sell to Wells Fargo or guys like that, you just have to go with the top best in class. And it is a much higher investment and a different dynamic. It's a different.
The same decision you had to make about being the CEO of the company or not, and what role and where do you best contribute. You also make some different decisions in 4IQ because you're not the CEO.
Yes.
How do you select the CEO, having had a chance to do it again? Why?
Yes, so we have the CEO here, Ms. Monica Paul, and she's. So it's so my perspective is I wanted to focus in technology. I learned in AlienVault I'm not good at operations. I don't like it so much, and I'm not good at operating. And Monica knows that very well. I'm pretty chaotic, but I think I'm good in diving deep and looking at the technology and pushing the limits of the technology, finding the new. And that is a CTO role now. And I'm really happy I did that now, because now Monica takes lots of the burden of the operations, which is hard. As you know, being a CEO is very hard.
It's interesting because at the beginning, I said, I think I'm going to do it for a little longer, but you came in very quickly and said, nah, we really need to bring somebody else in. It was interesting. Monica helped you launch AlienVault, remember?
Yeah, so it's what happens in Spain, but of course in Silicon Valley is very, very how do you say this word? It's very groups of people that know each other, and they have references of working together before. So Monica launched actually AlienVault in the US when she was the CMO marketing operations. So we had that experience, very positive experience, and she was work with you for a long time, because so you understand, Alberto is the investor as well as Adara, but Adara is one of led the Series A. And so it's an important role in 4AQ, and Monica has a big connection with you, of course. So there's a group of people that work together and feel good each other and know each other, and that typically works. Very good.
Yeah, you eliminate a lot of the risk of the people aspect, because probably the biggest issues in startups is knowing the people, the changes, the cultures, the DNAs that come together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that's what I really didn't know 10 years ago. The human factor, it's terribly hard. It's probably the biggest, most complicated, especially in global teams. When you have different cultures, different offices, it's really, really hard to manage those situations. So, and if you want to go long term, another thing that I learned in this journey, now I think long term, you need a very good group of people. You need a group of people that is healthy and they feel good. If not, it won't happen. It'll be solved in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But if you are able to sell in 10 years instead of 5, every year you might be doubling the revenue, so the outcome will be much bigger. No? So you need a very good team and stable and solid that work together. And
yeah, you know, Julio, it's been an honor for us to partner with you, not only in AlienVault, now at 4IQ, but you know the resilience of the entrepreneur that has the vision, that has the commitment, and is that failure is not an option, it's something that is innate in very few people. Everybody has a lot of ideas, but how do you make that idea into action? Takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of risk-taking. Not always is going to succeed. Nothing goes on a straight line.
Never.
Everything changes along the way. But I think for South Summit, Julio is one of the embodies the Spanish entrepreneur. They took a lot of risks, went to a place where he didn't know much about it, but he's been able to create a lot of success, a lot of millionaires in Spain as well, and now you're doing it all over again. Well, thank you. I hope that we can do it all over again, and we'll be back in South Summit when we talk about how 4IQ exited. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Alberto. You've been completely vital.
Thank you. Okay.
No más.